So the February meeting was yesterday. All the trustees were in attendance except for trustee Carrion. And then the items discussed were student outcome goals, as well as constraint progress measure 2.1, as well as a bond recap. So jumping into student outcome goals, GPM 1.1 to 1.3 were related to the projected domain 1 calculation for all students. So based off of the middle of the year map data, how students are projected to perform on STAR. The headline for pretty much all of these GPMs are the district did grow from last year, but they did not meet their target for this year. So 1.1 is just related to all students. 1.2 is related to African American student achievement. And then 1.3 is related to the percentage of students projected to get meets or above. Strategic adjustments are focusing on Tier 1 curriculum, making adjustments based off of this data. Additional support for African American students using interventionists and instructional specialists, and then implementing a uniform plan for Tier 2 instruction. So the district did say that they pretty much were going to stay the course with their planning. Basically, it's pretty common historically to experience a dip in middle of the year map data. So they're not necessarily as concerned. They do anticipate higher rates of acceleration in the spring for student achievement. And then 4.1 to 4.3 are related to same thing, projected domain 1 calculation, but just focusing on middle school grades, so grades 6 through 8. And the headline is essentially the same. The district did grow from last year, but did not meet their target for this year. So 4.1 is related to all students, 4.2 is African American student achievement, and then 4.3 is the percentage of students projected to get meets or above. So adjustments are providing more supports for Tier 1 instruction for math, assigning curriculum coaches to directly support PLCs and co-teaching for specific campuses, and then instructional delivery and pacing support for 7th grade math teachers. So the district did say that they made more progress this year in the middle of the year compared to previous years, and so they do anticipate higher outcomes on the STAR test at the end of the year. And then constraint progress measure 2.1 was related to staff satisfaction, specifically measured through the fall climate survey. And the district did say that they were off track in this goal. So they said that because they decreased from last year. So there's 71.9% of positive responses in comparison to last year's 73%. So they took a dip. And then all of the statements are displayed here. And the arrows indicate whether there was an increase or decrease. The yellow arrows indicate that if there was a decrease, it was by less than 1 percentage point, and then red arrows indicate a decrease of more than 1 percentage point from last year. And the district did say that they attribute this to the rollout of the new curriculum, as well as restructuring of PLCs, not necessarily the curriculum itself, but just how teachers and staff adapt to change in general. They cited the reset centers from 3 years ago as an example of an initiative that was initially met with a lot of resistance, but the district did show, based off of this data, the only statement that increased in positive responses was related to discipline. It's the green arrow that's fourth from the top. So discipline is enforced consistently and effectively at my campus. They saw an increase in favorable responses for that. So they just use that as an example of how sometimes things just take longer to adjust to. So as teachers adjust to this new curriculum, they think that these responses will begin to trend upward again. And then adjustments are tiered training for new teachers and progressing teachers. They provided managing transitions training, which is a book that they rolled out to campus leaders and administrative teams, coaching principles on climate and culture action plans, as well as expanding professional development that they did for high school and middle school office managers. They're going to expand that to elementary office managers. So the district is optimistic that this data will resume to trend upward again. They really attribute this to just the changes that were kind of major for teachers this year. discussion, Trustee Mackey wanted to know if there's a difference seen in MAP and ACP achievement. So the ACP is now only used for high school content areas in Algebra 1, which is sometimes given in middle school. So additional training on curriculum was given for those subjects. Are there any grade levels doing particularly well or falling behind? So middle school students, they said were doing particularly well, performing better than previous years. For falling behind, third and fourth grade did not experience growth in reading or math, and they attribute that to just lacking foundational language skills, vocabulary, and they are focused on strengthening alignment between basically pre-K through second grade as that builds up to third and fourth grade. Then he asked if there is still a divide between honor students and on-level students in grade 7. So context around this, basically 20% or so of seventh graders are enrolled in on-level grade 7 math. At the end of the year, they take the seventh grade STAR. So a very small proportion of seventh graders. The majority of seventh graders, close to 80% of them, are enrolled in honors grade 7 math. And this is kind of an accelerated course. At the end of the year, instead of taking the seventh grade math STAR, they actually take the eighth grade math STAR. And what the district experienced in data shown previously in the year is that when those students are pushed to honors, they perform a lot better than their counterparts in on-level grade 7 math. So they wanted to know if he wanted to know if that divide is still there, and they said yes. Those on-level students are still performing worse than their counterparts. And then he asked if there are plans to basically make structural changes around this, essentially eliminating on-level grade 7 math and eliminating the students' need to take the seventh grade math STAR, instead pushing them to the honors course in which they would take the eighth grade math STAR, since data is proving that those students are performing better when pushed. So they don't have any plans to change that right now. They're just going to add more resources for on-level students. They will continue to retain that cohort, but they did say that there, are discussions and potential strategies around structural changes to grade 7 math. Then he asked about a constraint progress measure. So first, staff satisfaction, were there outliers based on campuses or by teacher proficiency? So lower rates of campus satisfaction were recorded for campuses with new principals. Higher rates of campus satisfaction were recorded at elementary schools in comparison to middle or high schools. They do have the data disaggregated by campuses that they are going to send to trustees. They don't have the data by teacher proficiency though. They would have to, gather that. And then what are the climate and culture action plans? So this is just the principal receiving the survey data, sharing the results with the staff to figure out what changes can be made. And what the district wanted to stamp was that they really wanted to elevate teacher voice in those discussions and make sure that they're a part of those changes that are being made. Trustee Foreman wanted to know how many schools used Amplify and Eureka last year, since some schools did use that curriculum. So it was 99 schools, the majority of schools. It is new. This curriculum is new. And how are those schools who are new to the curriculum receiving it? So it depends on a variety of factors: leadership, strength of teachers, design of PLCs. Schools without implementation struggles did perform better, and the district is providing more support to campuses with those implementation struggles. And then she also wanted to know, since the district student population is decreasing, how might that affect outcomes? They said there shouldn't be an effect on outcomes. There wasn't any recorded effect on outcomes, at least based off of decreasing student population. Trustee Mitchke wanted to know if the new curriculum is moving the needle. So the answer is basically yes. On average, if there is a consistent leader at the campus, campuses made double-digit gains, and they still saw some growth in campuses where curriculum implementation was not necessarily at its highest fidelity. And then how confident is the district in these projections? So because of the format changes to the STAR exam, the correlation between MAP and STAR, they just said, while it is correlated, that relationship will grow over time as more data points are recorded. And then he also just said that often hears that discipline is a problem anecdotally, and there still definitely might be changes that need to be made, but the survey indicates that there are more positive responses to discipline than previous years, which is a good thing. And even though that there was a dip in staff satisfaction in pretty much all of the statements that were recorded, staff satisfaction is still higher than it was pre-pandemic. And then Trustee Henry asked, how does this data compare to the beginning of the year? So there are fewer declines than previous years, which is good. And the declines are also not as steep. They did want to highlight that because this is a norm reference test, a student has to grow just to maintain the same score they achieved at the beginning of the year. So the test basically becomes harder as the student does better at it. And then finally, the superintendent's report was on the bond recap. So passed in 2020. First, they wanted to highlight the members of the bond advisory board. Their names are to the right. So this is a 3.5 billion bond voted on by taxpayers. Of that, $1.48 billion has been used, and there's kind of a breakdown of the allocation and where it's going to. And then 242 projects are currently in various stages of pre-production or completion. And then they have exceeded their minority and women owned business utilization goals. And then they estimate nearly 50,000 jobs have been created because of these bond projects, and those jobs span various sectors. And they also wanted to share the district's Instagram page as well as a bond website, which is displayed here. In that, you can see all of the completed projects as well as those in the works, basically the budgets, timelines, artist renderings. So you can see what these projects are supposed to look like. And there's also a dashboard that shows basically you can sort the projects by district, geographic location. It shows the total amount of money spent on each. So basically, this bond enables the district to make improvements at pretty much all of the campuses and then complete significant work at, a smaller subset of them. And then renovation and modernization of facilities has a huge impact on student and staff satisfaction, community engagement, as well as the economy. So there wasn't much discussion. Overwhelmingly, all the trustees just shared their appreciation of the work of the advisory committee, as well as the district staff who support these projects. They said district staff has been very responsive to community feedback, highly engaged with community members. I will highlight the questions that were asked. So Trustee Mitchke wanted to know how the bond program is affected by inflation. So they did have contingency plans for the first projects and kind of the first prioritized projects. They're currently reassessing future projects. Trustee Flores and Trustee White just echoed the appreciation for the advisory committee, also Chief Construction Officer Alfred, who leads all of these projects, and they're just excited for the soon-to-be completed projects as well as upcoming projects in the district. Trustee Weinberg did ask, how has the bond affected the economics of North Texas? So they don't yet have a formal measurement, but as a comparison, Drexel Owosu, who gave the presentation, did say that a comparison is, it's assumed that when a new college campus is built in a community, there's a assumed 700% return on investment. So that's just a comparison when you think about new facilities for education, renovation of facilities. It's not one-to-one, obviously, but that is a way to make a comparison. And then Trustee Mackey asked, is the district on track with the number of schools expecting to be impacted at this point? Yes, future renovations might be impacted by inflation, but the district is identifying strategies to complete all of their planned projects. And then Trustee Foreman just said, these communities have needed new schools and renovations, and it's good to see that they're getting them. And Trustee Henry applauded the administration's openness and transparency in communicating what was project, what's been completed, what's still in development. So that was the February 2024 DISD board briefing. I'll stop sharing and